The Raiders' quarterback search. What's next? At this point, everyone knows the Las Vegas Raiders missed out on Matthew Stafford. He decided to stay with the Los Angeles Rams. But what many don't realize is that the Raiders aren't done yet. They're still searching for their next quarterback, and it won't be Aiden O'Connell or Brian Hoyer leading the team. The fact that the Raiders were fully committed to landing Stafford proves they're serious about making a big move. And now, according to NFL insider Tony Pinney, their attention has shifted to another quarterback, Sam Darnold. Pinney reports that sources close to Darnold, likely his agent, say that Raiders head coach Pete Carroll is pushing to acquire the quarterback from the Minnesota Vikings. This is how NFL news often works. Agents share inside information with reporters, who then release it to the public. Big names like Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter do this all the time, and Tony Pinney is another trusted insider. So, what does this mean? Some fans will be skeptical, and that's understandable. The Raiders have been linked to big moves before, only for them to fall apart. Remember when they were supposedly all in on Ben Johnson? Tom Brady even met with him, and at one point, the media had the Raiders as favorites to land him. The same thing just happened with Matthew Stafford. Reports said the Raiders offered Stafford a 2-year deal worth between $90 to $100 million. He even agreed to the contract, but in the end, the Rams matched the offer, and he stayed in Los Angeles. If the Raiders were willing to spend that kind of money on Stafford, why wouldn't they use it to go after Darnold now? Pete Carroll knows how important the quarterback position is, and if he wants to compete, he has to get the right guy. Of course, the big question is, will it actually happen? We'll have to wait and see. But one thing is clear. The Raiders are making serious efforts to improve. Unlike past years when they failed to even try, they are actively pursuing top talent. Think about it. How often have the Raiders made moves that actually made sense in the last 20 years? One of the last smart decisions they made was hiring John Gruden. He was supposed to fix Derek Carr and get the team back on track. That didn't work out, but at least it showed they were trying. Now, the Raiders are once again making big moves. Whether Sam Darnold is the answer or not remains to be seen. But one thing is for sure. They won't stop searching until they find their guy. The Raiders' quarterback strategy? Sam Darnold or a rookie? The Raiders' front office is making moves, and that's a good sign. They went after Ben Johnson, hoping to get a top coaching mind. They pursued Matthew Stafford, a veteran who could take them to the playoffs. That tells us one thing. This staff isn't just coasting. They're serious about winning. Now, with Stafford off the table, all eyes are on Sam Darnold. And let's be honest, Darnold would be a major upgrade at quarterback. He's mobile, he can create plays, and when paired with the right offensive coordinator, he can be effective. Just look at his past 2 seasons. Under good coaching, he's played well. Now, imagine what he could do under Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly. But here's the key question. Is Darnold worth the price? The Raiders were willing to pay Stafford nearly $50 million per year at age 37. Darnold at 26 could come cheaper, maybe around $35 to $40 million per season. And right now, the market for quarterbacks is thin. The Titans have the number 1, first overall pick, so they aren't chasing Darnold. The Giants are reportedly all in on Aaron Rodgers. That leaves just one serious suitor, the Raiders. If Las Vegas plays its cards right, they could land Darnold on a reasonable deal. And if he performs well over the next 2 or 3 years, he could earn a massive contract at 30. For the Raiders, this could be the best move. Drafting a quarterback. A risky gamble. Of course, there's another path, going all in on a rookie. But that comes with risks. The latest reports from the NFL Combine suggest Cam Ward is now the consensus number 1 quarterback prospect, while Sheeter Sanders' stock is falling. That means if the Raiders pass on Darnold and wait for the draft, they might have to settle for a project quarterback like Jackson Dart or Sanders. And that's where things get tricky. If the Raiders draft a rookie, they won't know if he's the answer right away. A first-year quarterback will need time to develop. If he struggles, fans will say, give him another year. If he struggles again, it's all right. One last chance in year 3. By that time, Pete Carroll could be retiring, and the coaching staff could be gone. The bottom line. Right now, the Raiders have the best coaching staff they've had in years. Wasting the next 3 seasons waiting for a rookie to develop could be a mistake. Instead, why not bring in a veteran like Darnold who can compete immediately? Look at teams like the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan. When they had Robert Saleh as defensive coordinator, they were a powerhouse. But once the coaching staff changed, things weren't the same. A great coaching staff doesn't stay together forever, so the time to win is now. For the Raiders, the choice is clear. Roll the dice on an unproven rookie, or bring in a quarterback who's ready to go. And if they're serious about winning in 2025, the veteran route might be the way to go. NFL scouts' take on this year's quarterback class. Months ago, I heard from legitimate NFL scouts that Cam Ward is the best quarterback in this draft class. These aren't just random opinions. I have friends who've worked their way up through the ranks, from covering college teams to landing jobs with NFL organizations. They've seen the top prospects up close, and their verdict has been clear. Ward stands above the rest. But what about Shedeur Sanders? A few months ago, I had him as quarterback 2 in this class. Now, things are getting more complicated. Jackson Dart is making a case, but if you ask me, Sanders is still the second-best quarterback available. However, the gap between Ward and Sanders isn't close. Think about previous drafts: Jaden Daniels versus Caleb Williams, Bryce Young versus C.J. Stroud. Those were neck-and-neck battles. This year, it's different. Ward looks like the clear-cut number. One quarterback, and the real question is, will another quarterback even go in the first round? The depth of this draft class. Why might teams pass on quarterbacks early? Because this draft is stacked with talent at other positions. There are star wide receivers like Anthony Belton, Travis Hunter, and Emeka Egbuka. Then there's Matthew Golden, who just ran a shocking 4.29-second 40-yard dash. He was already a top 4 wide receiver prospect, but now he might break into the top 15. And that's not even mentioning Tyrone McMillan, Luther Burden, and others. We could see 5 or 6 wide receivers taken in the first round. That means teams picking early might pass on quarterbacks to grab elite talent elsewhere. What should the Raiders do? With the number 6 pick, the Raiders have a huge decision to make. Do they draft a rookie quarterback and roll the dice? Or do they bring in a veteran like Sam Darnold and use that pick to land an impact player like Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? Pairing a solid veteran quarterback with an elite rookie could be the fastest way to turn this team around. And let's not forget, this draft is also deep in offensive linemen. Many college tackles are expected to move to guard in the NFL, which gives the Raiders flexibility in rebuilding their O-line. Offensive line prospects at the NFL Combine. Speaking of the offensive line, today marks the final day of the NFL Combine, and we're getting official measurements on linemen. These numbers are crucial in determining who can play where at the next level. Some college tackles will transition to guard in the pros, which could shake up draft boards. Before we dive into the details, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Underdog. If you haven't tried it yet, you're missing out. Unlike traditional fantasy sports, Underdog offers a unique game called Pick'em that keeps things exciting. I think he projects as a guard, and most teams will likely see him the same way. However, during the Combine interviews, he mentioned that some NFL teams have told him they'd draft him as a tackle. That doesn't quite make sense to me. I wouldn't spend the 6th overall pick on a guard, and his arm length is a big factor. If you look at mock draftable data, you won't find any starting offensive tackle with 32-inch arms. Josh Simmons is another player people consider a top tackle, but while his tape checks out, his measurements don't. He's nearly 6 feet 5 inches, so height isn't the issue. The concern is his arm length, 33 inches, which is a major red flag for a tackle. Because of that, I think he could end up falling in the draft. That said, he's still a solid offensive lineman with great movement skills. This year's tackle class has a lot of guys who might end up shifting to guard, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Look at players like Zach Martin, Tyler Smith and Brandon Scherf, guys who played tackle in college but became dominant guards in the NFL. This is a common trend. Even players like Peter Skoronski and Matthew Bergeron made the switch because of their shorter arms, and now they're some of the best guards in the league. Josh Simmons still has a shot at sticking at tackle, and he might be one of the first off the board. But another name to watch is Armand Mbaugh from Missouri. I love his tape. It's the best in this class. Interestingly, his arm length measured shorter at the combine than at the Senior Bowl. He came in at 6 feet 4 and a quarter inches and 332 pounds, with 33 and 1/12 inch arms. The height is fine, and the arms are passable. I think he has a real shot at being the first tackle taken. Would I be happy if the Raiders took him at 6th overall? I wouldn't love it, but I wouldn't hate it either. They don't necessarily need a right tackle. I'd give DJ Glaze another chance. But if they see Mbaugh as a long-term solution, I wouldn't be upset. The Raiders need to solidify that position, especially if they're bringing in a new quarterback. If they draft a right tackle, Glaze could move inside and become a really good guard, which is a common transition from college to the NFL. A couple of other names to keep an eye on: Charles Grant and Anthony Belton. Grant played at William & Mary, and his tape is among the best. Sure, the competition level wasn't elite, but his dominance was undeniable, similar to what we saw with Tyler Smith at Tulsa. Smith was physically overwhelming at that level and became one of the best guards in the NFL. Grant has similar traits. Jackson Powers Johnson is another player to watch. He dominated at Oregon, just like Smith and Grant did at their respective schools. Powers Johnson could end up being the best center in the NFL soon. Grant, on the other hand, played left tackle in college. The question is, will he stay there in the NFL? Measurement-wise, he checks out at nearly 6 feet 5 inches with 34 and a quarter inch arms, ideal for a tackle. He's likely a first-round pick, and had he been healthy enough to play in the Senior Bowl, his stock could have skyrocketed. If he performed well there, people might be calling him the best tackle in this class, similar to how Darnell Wright boosted his stock with a strong Senior Bowl showing. The Senior Bowl has a history of making or breaking draft prospects, and Anthony Belton is a prime example of a player who could see his stock rise significantly. His performance was reminiscent of past top 10 picks who used the event to showcase their dominance. While there are still questions about whether Belton can play tackle at the NFL level, his raw size and power make him an intriguing prospect. Standing at 6 feet 6 inches and weighing 336 pounds, Belton is a mountain of a man, and that extra 20 pounds compared to a 315-pound lineman is a significant difference in strength and presence on the field. Despite concerns about his movement, Belton's physicality and strength could make him a top 20 pick. If teams hesitate to play him at tackle due to mobility concerns, he could transition to guard, similar to Tyler Smith, who was drafted in the first round as a tackle but excelled at guard. Belton's size, power, and tape suggest that he could become one of the best interior linemen in the league within 2 years. Tyler Booker also has impressive measurements at 6 feet 4 inches, 358 pounds with 34.5-inch arms. While some consider him the best guard prospect, history shows that converted tackles often have more successful careers inside. Meanwhile, Josh Connerly is a bit of a mixed bag. At 6 feet 4 inches with 33.5-inch arms, he could still play tackle, but his struggles anchoring at the Senior Bowl raise concerns about how he will handle NFL power rushers. If he can't consistently anchor, his long-term outlook at tackle is questionable, and a transition to guard might be inevitable. Another interesting name is Amari Uwerser, whose movement skills have raised some doubts. Compared to Charles Grant and Anthony Belton, Uwerser looks a step slower. While he had a solid Senior Bowl and could be a first-round pick, his lack of elite movement may cause him to slip in the draft. Similarly, Dylan Fairchild is another strong interior prospect who will likely be a guard at the next level. One of the most physically imposing linemen in this class is Holland Pierce from Rutgers. At 6 feet 8 inches and 341 pounds with 36-inch arms, his measurements are elite. However, size alone does not guarantee success. Despite the buzz around his physical traits, his tape at Rutgers shows he struggles in key areas. making him more of a developmental prospect rather than an immediate impact player. There are several linemen in this draft, such as Jalen Rivers and Jonah Savina, who project as better long-term players despite not having the same eye-popping measurements as Pierce. Beyond the offensive line, the quarterback market remains a hot topic, with the Minnesota Vikings reportedly planning to franchise tag Sam Darnold. This move means the Raiders and other teams interested in Darnold would have to trade for him rather than signing him outright. The Vikings have already maneuvered their cap space by renegotiating Byron Murphy's contract, signaling that Darnold is their priority for the franchise tag. If the Raiders want Darnold, they'll have to give up assets. However, a high draft pick, such as the 6th overall selection, is out of the question. Even a second-round pick this year, 37th overall, might be too valuable in this deep draft class.